Taiwan's ex-president Ma Ying-jeou is to reportedly meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. The United States and Britain accuse China of hacking government officials and defense companies. Find out why this Taekwondo studio in northern Taiwan has found itself in the crosshairs of the Chinese military. Plus, baseball star Shohei Ohtani speaks out for the first time after a gambling scandal involving his former translator. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's ex-president will reportedly meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping during a 10-day trip to China next month. That's according to Taiwanese outlet Storm Media. Louise Watt is live for us in Taipei. Louise, how significant would such a meeting be?
It would be the first time a former leader of Taiwan has been to Beijing since the end of the Chinese Civil War more than 70 years ago. That said, it's not likely to be as significant as their first meeting back in 2015. That's when Ma, he was still the president of Taiwan, met Xi in Singapore. And that was a big deal because it was the first time the presidents of Taiwan and China had sat down for talks as equals. Nothing particularly concrete came out of that meeting, but it was more about the symbolism of having these two leaders shake hands in front of the world's international media. Now, this time around, the meeting would take place in China, but it's going to be much less significant because Ma has not been president for 8 years now. The timing is notable, though, because it would come just a few weeks before Taiwan gets a new president. Liao will take office in May, and he's the man that Beijing did not want to see in power. In fact, they went as far as to say a vote for Liao would be a vote for war. So Ma may just want to dial down the tensions. He may want to make political capital out of his trip. Most likely, he wants to do both.
Louise, what kind of a figure is Ma?
Ma is still a key opposition figure. He's a member of the Kuomintang, the KMT, which favors closer relations with Beijing than Taiwan's current government does. He's a key link between China and Taiwan. He visited China just last year, and in doing so, he became the first former Taiwanese president to go to China. He is a controversial figure. He may well wield still some influence within his party, but even they distanced themselves from him recently after he gave an interview to foreign media in which he said Taiwan should reduce its spending on defense because it can never win a war against China. So if he does meet Xi, it's hard to see him winning any concessions. That said, his allies here say that it's a chance for him to tamp down tensions. And of course, Ma will no doubt see it as an opportunity for him to further his own political legacy.
Well, thank you, Louise. That was Louise Watt speaking to us from Taipei. The United States and Britain have accused China of a decade-long hacking campaign against politicians, government officials, and defense companies. They say an arm of China's Ministry of State Security targeted White House staffers, U.S. senators, and others who criticized Beijing. Washington says the campaign was trying to repress critics of the Chinese Communist Party, compromise government institutions, and steal trade secrets. Prosecutors in the U.S. have charged 7 alleged Chinese hackers. The Chinese embassy in London says the charges are fabricated. Images of Taiwan's streets have surfaced on Chinese military social media accounts. According to analysts, China is recreating Taiwan's landscape to train its soldiers for an invasion. I went to one of the streets in northern Taiwan that was recreated to check things out. We're out here on a quiet street in Taoyuan City in northern Taiwan. You might not recognize it because it's in a mostly suburban area of the country. But if you follow the Chinese military on social media, then it might seem familiar. That's because this Taekwondo studio behind me appeared on one of their accounts earlier this week. But the published images weren't taken here in Taiwan. They were actually taken at a training ground in China. What gives? Well, analysts say that the Chinese military is training for an invasion of Taiwan using replicas of the country's geography.
这种战术层面，把台湾的一些街景融入，意思就是让他们的部队训练的时候可以熟悉这地景地物。那么如果在进行作战的时候，就更为容易辨别这个方向。
Taoyuan is one of Taiwan's army strongholds. In this area, there are several campgrounds, bases, and a military academy, making it a prime target for an invasion force. But this isn't the first time a Taiwan building has shown up on Chinese social media. Previously, replicas of Taiwan's presidential office and foreign ministry have all showed up on Chinese military accounts. But this replica of the Taekwondo studio is turning heads for its attention to detail. It's been recreated right down to its logo and phone number. Against a backdrop of fraught cross-strait tensions, these images serve to show just how tense the Taiwan-China relationship truly is. Joseph Wu and Leslie Liao in Taoyuan City for TaiwanPlus. Taiwan's Coast Guard has chased off 4 Chinese fishing boats in a single day from restricted waters off the west coast of Taiwan's main island. The first reports of Chinese boats came in the early hours of Monday morning. The Coast Guard intercepted 2 vessels that were in restricted waters but not actively fishing. They intercepted another pair of boats on Monday afternoon. The Coast Guard says it will step up its efforts to enforce Taiwan's maritime boundaries. President Tsai Ing-wen oversaw the commissioning of 2 new Navy ships today at the eastern port of Suao in Yilan County. The Tuojiang-class corvettes are number 6 and 7 out of a planned 11 ships to be delivered by 2026. The first Tuojiang-class ship entered service in 2014. Tsai says the new ships will help defend Taiwan's maritime borders.
提升舰艇的性能，也会让我们的弟兄姐妹在执行勤务的时候有更安全的工作环境。政府会继续努力打造现代化、专业化的优质部队，展现我们全方位捍卫海疆的决心。
Pressure is growing on President Tsai Ing-wen to make a visit to a Taiwanese outpost in the South China Sea. As John Ventress reports, it's unlikely this pressure will go away during Tsai's final weeks in office.
It's the most contested bit of land under Taiwan's administration, claimed not just by Taiwan, but by China, Vietnam, and the Philippines, too. And this week, Taiping Island, also known as Itu Aba, is at the center of a political tussle within Taiwan. The island is 1,600 kilometers away from Taiwan, one of 2 Taiwanese outposts in the hotly disputed South China Sea. No civilians live there, but there's been a decades-long Coast Guard presence, with around 200 people stationed on the island. As President Tsai Ing-wen prepares to end her final term, the opposition Kuomintang says she should visit the island to remind the world of Taiwan's sovereignty there. They say the last 2 presidents both visited while in office, and they say that now is a good time for Tsai to go too, as work to repair the island's wharf has recently finished. Tsai's immediate predecessor, the Kuomintang's Ma Ying-jeou, has been especially vocal, making his own open call on Facebook. Ma took a special interest in the island while president. His administration argued that because the island can support life, Taiwan should get an exclusive economic zone around it. He led a delegation to the island in 2016, and later that same year sponsored a tour of the island by foreign journalists. The Coast Guard is confident the newly repaired wharf will allow Taiwan to better project its power in the surrounding waters.
本属业规划100吨级巡防艇常态进驻太平岛，可供4000吨级巡防舰泊靠，机动执行护江任务。
But Tsai's administration says recent conflict between the Chinese and Philippine Coast Guards nearby means that now isn't a good time for a presidential visit. Chen Shui-bian, the first Taiwan president to visit the island and a fellow member of Tsai's Democratic Progressive Party, agrees there could be a security risk. But that isn't stopping lawmakers on the legislature's Defense Committee from planning a visit on May 16th, just days before Tsai leaves office. So attention on Taiping Island and political pressure for Tsai to go there are going to stay until the very end of her term. Devin Tsai and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, new research that could make smokers think twice about lighting up.
Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Inka Vat. Today we examine China's engagement with Africa.
Unfortunately, this very aggressive form of cultural revolution-like politics in China seems to be moving forward in this modern era.
This grave injustice is happening.
The issue is, what can the U.S. do to help strengthen Taiwan?
We need that kind of mindset to prepare for the warfare.
What implications does this have on Taiwan and the region as a whole?
Just like Ukraine right now, you need people to understand we're doing this for our own country.
Reaffirmed our support for the Taiwanese ability to make their own decisions about their own future.
It's very hard to duplicate in the short time. Taiwan still can continue being the leading position if we put efforts on R&D.
And you are riding on a wave. This is exactly the time you need to double down.
Or I did not realize I am actually running to be the first Asian woman in the state senate. Our next generation, they can see Asian American is as equal and have the same platform.
Taiwan Talks provides a platform for the voices and perspectives that are shaping our country.
For more stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, visit us on social media or follow our website at TaiwanPlus.com.
We bring you stories from Taiwan
every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A Formosan black bear found caught in a snare in eastern Taiwan has died of its injuries. Local volunteers found the bear and called in a team of forestry workers. They sedated the bear and brought it back to a veterinary clinic, but the bear died from an infection leading to organ failure. Formosan black bears are endangered with an estimated 200 to 600 living in the wild. Taiwan law protects the country's largest mammal, but a growing number have been coming into contact with human settlements, putting them in danger from hunting traps. New research is adding to the evidence that smoking damages the brain. Researchers in Taiwan have found that cigarette smoke contains fine particles that can travel into the brain and harm the nervous system. Irene Lin has this report.
Smokers might want to think twice before lighting up their next cigarette. A research team in Taiwan has found that cigarette smoke could be far more dangerous than we already know. That's because of tiny particles released when tobacco is burned.
右手边这是大于 PM1 的，就所谓1微米以上的颗粒。那左手边这个是1微米以下的颗粒，所以很明显看到，其实香烟产生的气胶里面大部分都是小于1微米的颗粒。
The researchers say over 80% of cigarette smoke contains these extremely fine particles. As they enter our bodies through first and second smoke, they can damage more than the throat and lungs.
更微小，大概几百纳米的颗粒，它有机会呢，从这个鼻脑通道，我们在呼吸的时候，经过嗅球区，穿透了血脑屏障，去影响到大脑的神经。
Defects in the central nervous system have been linked to serious diseases. Past research shows a connection between Parkinson's disease and clumps of a type of protein in the brain called alpha-synuclein. Scientists think these so-called Lewy bodies become toxic and spread from one neuron to the other, worsening the disease. After combining smoke particles with a sample of this protein, the team found that cigarette smoke can worsen Parkinson's symptoms by killing more nerve cells.
那氧化压力会影响到就是各样的面向。那我们只是针对就是它细胞调控的一个 recycle 的机制、回收的机制或校准的机制，它就是失常的。对，那这样的一个失常的状态，其实上就是如果不可逆的话，最后就是大量的细胞死亡。
Many people say smoking helps relieve stress, but scientists are growing more certain that tobacco smoke shifts the stress to the body. Scott Huang and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has acknowledged that what he called radical Islamists carried out last week's attack on a Moscow concert hall. but he's not given up on the idea that Ukraine was still somehow involved. Rosie Greninger has the latest.
3 more suspects before a Russian court, charged in connection with the bloody attack on a music venue near Moscow that claimed the lives of 137 people. 2 of these men, brothers. One owned the car used by the perpetrators on the night of the attack. The other maintains his innocence. The 3rd suspect is their father. 14 people have now been arrested for the assault on a popular music hall, where attackers opened fire on crowds before setting the building alight. 7 of them charged. An offshoot of the radical Islamic State, ISIS-K, has claimed responsibility. But Russian President Vladimir Putin believes a third party is involved.
Что кровавый теракт совершили последователи ислама, члены запрещенной в России организации ИГИЛ. Мы знаем, чьими руками было совершено это злодеяние против России и ее народа. Нас интересует, кто заказчик, кому это выгодно. Это злодеяние может быть лишь звеном в целой серии попыток тех, кто с 2014 года воюет с нашей страной руками неонацистского киевского режима.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has dismissed these accusations as absurd, with other global leaders saying it's counterproductive to shift blame to Ukraine. US intelligence has also confirmed the involvement of ISIS-K. According to security analysts, this branch of the Islamic State has grown strong in recent years, with thousands of fighters, and has become fixated on Russia. The group reportedly sees the country as complicit in activities that oppress Muslims, and believe Russia is too close with one of their foes, the Taliban.
Fast forward a bit, and Russia, of course, backed Syria during the Civil War, and the Islamic State was on the other side of that. So Russia is seen as working with Syria, fighting Muslims in the Caucasus and Central Asia. Both the group in particular, but also the broader community are very anti-Russian.
ISIS-K shared graphic footage online of attackers inside the music venue. But with 14 suspects now in custody, there are concerns that violent intimidation tactics could lead to confessions that will include links to Ukraine, in line with the accusations of the Russian president.
So I think, to the first question, I think that that story probably is going to be more and more Ukrainian connected, I'm sure. And that's, I mean, obviously those suspects we saw them already, they were tortured. I mean, it's clear that they were tortured and beaten up. So the confessions are coming, and the confessions probably, since we know what Russian confessions are like, the confessions are probably going to have the Ukrainian, at least some bit of a Ukrainian element in it.
Russia's war with neighbouring Ukraine is now in its 3rd year. And with all the focus on the border, this surprise attack near the capital has proved a fresh threat for the country's security. And for the newly re-elected Putin, who begins his 5th term as president, this assault undermines his promise of stability and safety. Now the Russian leader faces the challenge of bringing the guilty to justice and reassuring his own people. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Benjamin Netanyahu has canceled an Israeli delegation that was due to visit Washington after the U.S. failed to use its veto power to block a UN resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The resolution, passed by the Security Council on Monday, calls for an immediate halt in fighting and for the release of all hostages held by Hamas. The U.S. abstained from the vote, while all other 14 council members voted in favor. Gaza's health ministry says at least 32,000 people have been killed in the fighting. A major bridge has collapsed in the U.S. city of Baltimore, sending vehicles into the river below after it was struck by a massive cargo ship. The U.S. Coast Guard says that the Singaporean-flagged cargo ship Dali struck the bridge at around 1:30 a.m. local time. A video of the event appears to show the bridge collapsing just seconds later. The local fire department says it's searching for at least 7 people believed to be in the water and has called the incident a developing mass casualty event. The main span of the Francis Scott Key Bridge was nearly 400 meters across, making it the 3rd longest bridge of its kind in the world. 2 prominent gang leaders in Haiti have been killed, and signs point to the resurgence of a vigilante justice movement in Port-au-Prince. Harrell Hughes reports.
Chaos in Haiti. After Prime Minister Ariel Henry resigned at the beginning of March, criminal gangs have taken over the country. They now control an estimated 90% of the capital city, Port-au-Prince. Thousands of people are dead, hundreds of thousands are displaced, and millions are struggling to eat. Nowhere is safe. Haiti's police are outgunned, and residents are desperate for safety. The country is now at a tipping point, and a citizen vigilante movement is having a resurgence, seen here organizing a year ago. Bois calé means peeled wood, a local reference for swift justice. The movement was born in April last year as a response to escalating gang violence. A crowd of civilians lynched suspected gang members, forcing gasoline-soaked tires around them and lighting them on fire. The residual scorch marks left as a warning to encroaching gangs, who stayed back until recently, when, emboldened by the continuing power vacuum, they returned to feuding for control. But it seems so is Bois calé. The charred remains of a dozen people were recovered here. One of them, identified by authorities as a prominent gang leader. There has been no stability in Haiti since the sitting prime minister was assassinated in 2021. That case has yet to be resolved, and Haiti's 11 million people now face a humanitarian crisis. The international community is working to facilitate a transition council, which would establish new leadership in the country. But political analysts say that won't make much of a difference.
We have to understand that for most people, whether there's a prime minister today and not tomorrow, it's not going to make a difference in their life if that government wasn't doing anything to support them from the beginning.
Uncertain and living in fear, residents here have put up makeshift barricades, conducting rotational patrols with sharpened machetes and rocks, doing whatever they can to keep their communities safe. Ryan Wu and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Japan's cabinet has approved a plan to sell a next-generation fighter jet to other countries, breaking from decades of tradition. The fighter jet is being developed in collaboration with the UK and Italy. It'll be the first time Japan exports lethal weapons that it co-produced to other countries. It's the country's latest move away from its post-war pacifist policies, which limited transfers of military equipment and banned exports of lethal weaponry. Under Prime Minister Kishida Fumio's government, Japan has loosened restrictions on arms exports to bolster the country's arms industry and to shift away from purely supporting roles in global security. Baseball star Shohei Ohtani has spoken out about the gambling scandal involving his former translator. Wesley Lewis has the details.
Lies and betrayal. Baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani says he feels saddened that his former translator, Mizuhara Ippei, would violate his trust. They're the first comments Ohtani has made since it was discovered Mizuhara was stealing millions from the Los Angeles Dodgers player to place on illegal bets.
正直ショックという言葉が正しいとは思わないですし、それ以上のうまく言葉では表せないような感覚でこの1週間ぐらいはずっと過ごしてきたので、今はそれをうまく言葉にするのは難しいなと思っています。
The Dodgers fired Mizuhara last week. By then, he had allegedly incurred around $4.5 million in debt. Mizuhara had been Ohtani's interpreter in the U.S. since his major league debut in 2018. His activities came to light when Ohtani's name appeared on a series of bank transfers to an illegal gambling operation based in Southern California. Mizuhara initially said those transactions were to help cover his losses. Ohtani strongly refuted that account at his press conference.
結論から言うと、彼が僕の、口座からお金を、盗んで、なおかつ、みんな僕の周りもそうですね、みんなに、嘘をついていたっていうのが、結論から言うとそういうことになります。
Ohtani's lawyers say the player is innocent and is a victim of massive theft. Mizuhara and his bookmaker are now under investigation by U.S. authorities. The scandal has caught the attention of Japanese media and baseball fans the world over. Fans in Japan have expressed sympathy for their countrymen.
大谷選手の自身の話じゃないけど、結局大谷選手にも結局火の粉が飛んできちゃってるんで、大谷選手にとってはその水原さんってほぼ多分身内に入る部分ではあるんですから、しょうがないかなっていう部分ではあるんですけど、でも本音はやっぱり大谷選手はかわいそうかなっていうふうには思います。
With the major league season in full swing, Ohtani said he will do what he can to assist the investigation. But he plans to let his lawyers handle matters while he focuses his energy on doing what he does best, winning baseball games. James Lin and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, check out these Hindu devotees celebrating Holi, the festival of colors in India. I'm Liao. Take care, and I'll see you next time.